Hello everyone, thanks for stopping by. Today we'll be taking a look at a kit which is pretty special at the moment, just in terms of how new it is. It's the high-grade Guel's Dilanza from the currently ongoing anime, Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury. And I absolutely love this box art, it's so good. I'm not going to talk about the anime just because it is so new. When this video is uploaded, we've only just gotten up to episode 4. But when I saw the mobile suit designs, I was pretty impressed. Right off the bat, I knew I had to get the Dilanza in kit form because it's the series Zaku clone. In terms of design, these new mobile suits look like a cross between IBO and Reconquista designs, which makes sense given that the mechanical designer for a lot of these new suits, including the Dilanza, is Ippei Yobu. If you're unfamiliar with that name, he's responsible for designs such as the G Lucifer, Grimoire, Space Jahannam, the kit of which I've got mixed feelings on, Montero, Moon Gundam, Vargul, Zaku 4, Gujin, Kimaris, Manrodi, and Shiden, the kit of which was actually supposed to be the subject of this week's video, but will probably be pushed back a week or two. In terms of the build, this kit is great. It features an all-plastic construction and has lots of slide molding which is needed since there are a lot of curved surfaces. This kit also keeps connections hidden, if that makes sense. The screw gates are placed smartly and are very delicate, and there's a lot of articulation for such a bulky design. There's a lot to like, and it makes me excited about the rest of the high-grade G-Witch lineup. I find it a little hard talking about a kit like this just because it is so new, but it's one I can highly recommend, and I'm really lucky to get this before it dropped over here in the States. I mean, it's a 2022 release, of course it's gonna be good. The kit has been primed with Mr. Surfacer 1000 and given a coat of Tamiya TS42 light gunmetal. I'm starting off as usual by painting the frame parts and inner surfaces with Basalt Gray. It's a perfect gray, being dark yet neutral. I use this paint on every build for a reason. In the past, I haven't been as reliant as I am currently with Basalt Gray, opting to leave lots of the metallic showing, but I do like having contrast between metallic and actual color when I do some chipping, so this is just an aspect of my style evolving. It's a really good thing I've got a lot of this paint because there is a lot of area to cover. This kit has a lot of detail on parts you won't see that often, like the undersides of the shoulder shields and the inside of the rear skirt piece. Basalt Gray is the perfect color for this and fits with anything vaguely mechanical, and I've even used this paint on a lot of my weapons. I'm painting the torso, and this really sets the tone for the build. I've decided on doing my take on the anime color scheme, so instead of the gray the torso comes molded in, I chose a dark brown. I do use some red for the area around the Vulcans and some light blue on some of the chest details for a pop of color, and I also use some black gray on the waist and backpack just because it's a color that works very well with a dark brown. I like using dark brown because it's very similar in tone to a dark gray, but it's different enough to have its own character. I think brown is a really underrated color, and I'm trying to use it a lot more in my builds. Now I'm getting to paint the main color. I chose a paint which is pretty similar to the magenta of Guel's Dilanza because I am, as said earlier, doing my take on the anime colors. At first, I was considering using a light gray for the main color and using the violet as more of an accent on the chest, but I noticed that it would be pretty similar to the Gundam Elfrith color scheme, and felt like that would get commented on. It's also similar to a color scheme I'm using for the next painting video, and I didn't want to say similar things for 2 painting videos in a row. I also could have mixed up a screen accurate version of the magenta, but I'm fine with how this color looks. This is a really nice color, one of my favorites, but it is pretty difficult to hand paint. You really need to build up the color in layers. At first, I tried brushing it on conventionally, which worked okay on the smaller surfaces, but on larger ones I did have to sort of stipple it on to avoid brush strokes. Because of this, I did use more coats than usual. I'd say I gave things 4 or 5 coats when I normally use 2 or 3. I'm using black gray on certain areas to break up the larger parts of the violet, and this is the same gray I use for the backpack and the waist, so things are staying a bit cohesive. I wanted to do a second purple on the legs, which is a concept I borrowed from my Master Grade Jagan build, and this purple isn't the one I end up going with. It really didn't have the right kind of contrast with the violet, and I came to this realization as I was painting this color on, but I do keep painting it on both legs so that the color I'm painting on top of it will be as consistent as possible. I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't have made that much of a difference since the purple you're seeing is going into the mixture for the newer purple, and it's not as drastic of a change as, say, painting yellow over pink or white over blue, but I did want to play it pretty safe. And now I'm going ahead and painting that new purple. I wanted a darker color, so I took that first color and added some dark brown to the mixture, as well as some of the violet I used earlier just to sort of make the two colors blend together. And this paint does work a lot better than what I had going on before. The color scheme so far reminds me of the Gira and Rosen Zulus used by Angelo Sauper, as well as the Fried Schneid from Gundam Unicorn. It's a really good looking combo, and I've been wanting to use this color scheme again since I did that Jagan. It's just that until now, I didn't really have a subject I thought was perfect for it. I wanted to add a few more pops of color to once again break up the large purple surfaces, so I'm using a yellow mixture for the insides of all the different thruster and vent details. Red is the usual color for these parts, but yellow works well too, and I personally think red would have been too subtle a color. I've added some yellow ochre to my yellow mix just to make it easier to paint. Yellow can be a bit temperamental, and the color you paint yellow over really influences it. In this case, all the vent surfaces have been given a coat of that basalt gray previously. So in addition to darkening the yellow and making it match better with the purples, the ochre stabilizes the mixture without taking all the vibrance out. Now I've got to paint the shoulder shields, and I'm just using a really dark gray, which gives off the illusion of black at this scale, but is easier to paint. And as soon as the paint is dry, I'm going to add some masking tape to prepare for stripes. This is an idea I had as soon as I bought this kit. I wanted the Dilanza to be even bolder than it already is, and stripes are perfect for this. Whenever I need a pop of interest on a paint job, stripes are my first choice. I don't always use two colors, but this will benefit from it. While masking, I use a combination of standard Tamiya tape and their masking tape for curves, just to be safe. For something as simple as a shoulder shield, these have a lot of detail, which is a nice change of pace from what I'm used to, but also complicates masking and painting. Now I'm using a really light gray for the stripes. I never use actual white, just like I never use actual black. The light gray is easier to deal with, and it gives off the impression of white at this scale. And I'm painting these stripes sort of along the masking tape instead of going perpendicular to the masking tape. And this isn't necessarily to avoid spillage, but to build up an even coat. Using black and white in quotations, is the perfect set of colors for the stripes in my opinion. They're bold, and the light gray ties the other areas of light gray on the chest and that plume together. I've got to paint the eye sensor, and this is pretty difficult to do since it is two different colors. There's a green section on the bottom and a yellow section on top, and this is hard because I couldn't physically take the head apart to remove the sensor part. I did get some paint bleeding in areas I didn't want, so I do go back and forth with the two colors to sort of blend them together. I will go back at some point and repaint this if I can find a yellow that I like better than the clear one I was using. I'm adding some decals. Unsurprisingly, there aren't any dedicated decal sets for this kit, but I do have a lot of generic 1 to 1/44 scale decals just for this purpose. The set I'm using comes in many colors. I chose gray because it's a color that pairs really well with darker paints. The gray is a bit more subtle than the usual white, which comes in handy due to how bold things are already. I feel like using white would have been too much. I normally apply decals over a semi-gloss surface to help avoid silvering, but because these decals are so small and so thin, they don't need one. I let the decals dry for around an hour, so afterwards I'm chipping it up with some metal tweezers. I usually use some sort of sanding sponge and my hobby knife as well, but I wanted the chipping to be more subtle, so in this case I'm just using the tweezers. I like using tweezers because they have a bit of spring, so I can bounce them all over the model to create standalone chips, as well as scrape the model to create some scratched effects. I prefer physical chipping over painted on chips because of how fine the results are, creating a more realistic look. I also just enjoy the process of beating up the paint coat I was pretty careful with applying. And I feel with chipping, this is where a build really comes together and starts to look right in my opinion. The kit has this large beam Partizan, so I'm painting it red. It was molded in the same magenta as the rest of the kit, but I didn't feel like using more of the violet, so I went with the red, and I think it does go well with the different purples. I sprayed a light coat of semi-gloss, and now I'm just doing a pin wash. Pin washes are great, both emphasizing detail and making the model seem lifelike by creating fake shadows. I like using a pre-made wash because it's already at the perfect consistency, where it will flow into detail but not out of it. It's important to apply a wash over a semi-gloss surface because it does help it flow better into detail, and it stays in the detail as opposed to spreading out and creating tide marks and flooding the surface in areas you don't want it. I have tried doing a wash over a flat surface, and the result from that is much messier, which in some cases could honestly work, but that's not what I want for this build. In some areas, I apply the wash all over a detail to shade it and make that entire detail just a little darker. This makes it seem further back and emphasizes the dimensionality of the model. I wanted to give the model a bit of a patina, so I do some speckling with a brown wash. Afterwards, I give the model a flat coat, and then I just do some speckling with the glossy paint to break up the flat surface. I'm then going ahead and doing a condensed version of the previous weathering on the beam Partizan. There's no intermediate clear coats in between steps, so it is a bit tricky to clean up the wash, but other than that, there isn't anything of note. And after that's done, the Dilanza is complete, and here it is. This was a super fun kit to work with, and if I can get more G-Witch kits to paint on the channel, I will. As usual, this isn't a definite guide on what you should be doing with your Gunpla, but a look into my own process. If you like this video, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next video, whenever that is.